Are we good, Ted? I don't know if Ted can hear me. I hope everybody else can hear me. Are we good, Ted? Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good. I forget that you have such a tiny screen that you're working with. I'm giving you the
I do.
thumbs up, but you can't see me.
I can't see anything. I do see some glitching though. No, it looks okay on the Facebook. So hey, everybody, anyone that's gonna watch this, anyone that may come on live, I saw there was already
uh,
people
sorry.
coming on live, and you have joined the Healing Tree live. And actually, before we started, we hold these truths. Ted and I kind of sat down with this concept that I really thought there was a need for, and there are some out there, a podcast or a live video segment concerning, for one, cannabis issues. I think that there's a lot of misinformation in our world, in our country, about the legitimacy of cannabis as a medicine. And a lot of people reject the cannabis culture per se, or they've been propagandized since they were children that cannabis is a dangerous drug, and the reefer madness era where they showed people smoking cannabis and jumping out of windows, and just people going crazy and committing crimes like they were doing heroin or something. And nobody in this generation, in our age, really takes any of those reefer madness videos seriously anymore, but they still utilize some really bad arguments about why cannabis is a controlled substance, which really it comes down to pharmaceutical companies, special interests, and other people who would lose money over cannabis being accessible to everybody if they so felt like treating their medical conditions with it. And so I just really felt like it was important not only to raise this issue, but to bring people on the show that are active in the community and either are patients, or maybe their child is a patient, or they're a doctor, or something where they have some legitimate and solid knowledge about the efficacy of cannabis as medicine. But one thing I haven't been able to find out there was, they talk about the various illnesses it can treat. I've seen a lot of testimonies and videos of people testifying that they do use cannabis to treat specific conditions, but it's really hard to get a breakdown of how people are using it. What type of cannabis strain are they using, or what type of ingestion are they smoking it? Are they eating it? When cannabis first began to be legalized, you have all those people, those bought out politicians out there, and they'd be saying things like, "You don't smoke your medicine." And I used to always sit there and think, well, I don't even think everybody smokes cannabis to treat their conditions. There's some conditions you can't smoke cannabis to treat those conditions. And so I thought that this would be a good opportunity, this live show, to get people on who can help educate the public and really even talk about how they treat specific illnesses. Then in the future, as we develop this show and we get our YouTube page going, we want to start breaking it down by specific ailments and illnesses, so people can go to the website, which is healingtree.life, and actually just search based on the condition that's being treated. So if there's somebody that is interested for epilepsy per se, they can click on the epilepsy tab. And basically every article we find, every interview we do, any resource where a patient can make an educated decision and even utilize some of those tools to go to their doctors or their loved ones or their friends, people that they might be concerned about, letting them know that they use cannabis, because there's still a shame culture surrounding that, and educate them. Look, watch this video. Look, here's an article. Look, this research was done in Israel. And so we're hoping this works. We're hoping we can find good guests, and I believe we have one today. Today we have with us James Meissner, and we're going to talk a little bit about his story and his activism and his Facebook page, One Plant, hashtag One Plant, because I think he's out there doing a good work. James shares something. We're both veterans, and I just want to see, James, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you're a part of. I've been talking back and forth to you and saying, hey, I want you to come on this live thing with me. But, we haven't had a lot of time to really discuss what it was about and what we're doing. I mean, what do you think about the idea of having kind of a centralized resource where people can go and get access to interviews, get access to articles and research based on their specific condition? You think there's a need for that out there?
Oh, definitely. And I think you're going to see a lot more of it going forward as, cannabis becomes more mainstream and utilized by actual medical professionals. You're going to see this type of platforms popping up everywhere. I would hope anyway, because we all need to be educated as we learn.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I was just doing some research this evening or this morning and last evening, and really the pharmaceutical industries are trying to continue to drive the narrative. We have cannabis as a Schedule 1, which means, to people that don't know the scheduling, how it tiers, is that there is no medical use. There's no medical benefit. That this drug is so dangerous. It's up there with cocaine, with heroin. But yet then we have these companies, like recently, I don't remember the name of the company, but they created an epilepsy medication. I think it's called like Epilax or something like that. And it's derived.
Epidiolex.
Yes, thank you. I knew you would know this. And what do you know about this medication that they just came with? Have you researched it at all?
Oh yeah, GW Pharmaceutical, Greenwich Biosciences. They're the ones that created Epidiolex. They're out of the UK, and they've been around for a long time, and they've been creating cannabinoid-based medicines for a long time. In fact, they've had a drug probably since the 90s, maybe the early 2000s, called Sativex over in Europe that has been used to treat pain and wasting in cancer patients, AIDS patients, things like that. And now they're remarketing it to treat tumors and cancers. So it's actually going to be marketed as a cancer treatment here in the United States. That's the next cannabis-based drug that you'll probably see here, probably this year. They've already applied for some type of patent on it and some type of a drug research program here in the U.S. But Epidiolex is hitting the markets right now, and that's the important thing. That's the very first ever cannabis-based medicine here in the U.S. that'll be allowed to be prescribed and insured and whatnot. But that comes at a huge price tag.
Sure, and not only that, while we have the FDA, okay, attacking people that are trying to get CBD, real good sourced, straight, non-pharmacologically manipulated CBD oil, straight from the plant, and the FDA attacking people who are claiming that it has any kind of medical or health benefit, but they're promoting these companies that are coming out with these drugs that are derived, which I think, as I start in this program, that's part of the obstacles that we face as people who are patients, of educating the public, is that we have this amazing propaganda campaign from pharmaceutical companies that are finding a way to take this plant that almost anyone can grow. It's very hardy. It's, not anyone, but you can grow it in your house, or you can get it from someone that does, that has all these different conditions that research is showing that it can treat, but it's accessible. And because there's so many different cannabinoids in that plant, they've had a hard time isolating them and finding out which ones actually treat which. So they're continuing to demonize the plant itself while creating these drugs so that they can basically get a patent on the treatment methodology and make a whole lot of money. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what a lot of it's been about since it originally became prohibited. And you saw all of these medicines that were marketed here in the U.S. that contained cannabis that were used for a myriad of illnesses and ailments that they just disappeared off the markets. And then you saw they were replaced by these pharmaceutical drugs. And I do think that's what the pharmaceutical companies and the American government has done, is they've outlawed certain drugs, and mostly natural plant-based things that, that we could easily access and obtain, and they've outlawed these and put them in their own proverbial medicine cabinet so that they could synthesize them and sell them back to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hopefully, I think that the cat's been so let out of the bag that the pharmaceutical companies are behind the curve right now. And I really don't think, unless they do something even more corrupt than they're doing already, they're going to get ahead of the curve as legalization continues going across the country. 10 years ago, you really couldn't have a show like this. You couldn't have a Facebook page. If it had existed at that time, you'd get your door kicked in. And so it's really, really
right.
Changing in this country. But let's talk a little bit about you. So, because there's an important issue. We have 22 veterans a day who commit suicide. I don't know if that's number has changed recently. I did just see a recent report on how many veterans were committing suicide in the VA parking lots. I'm a disabled veteran. I used to use the VA. They drugged me up on pills, and eventually led to an opiate dependency in my own life. So I know that cannabis is a life-saving medicine. But you're a veteran as well, correct? You want to tell everyone a little bit about your history?
Yeah, I served about 9 years in the United States Coast Guard. I was a federal law enforcement officer, and I was specially deputized as a U.S. Marshal or USC Marshal after 9/11. And, so I was part of that whole drug war, and in enforcing the drug war, as much as I didn't really like it back then. And I actually thought it was very, hypocritical even then, and when I was involved in it. And that's part of the reason why I stepped away, not completely, but part of the reason why I left. But I did a lot of Homeland Security patrols for a number of years after 9/11. And then after I got transferred to a boat in New Orleans, and sure enough, Katrina hit the day before I was supposed to report aboard. So I spent the next few years in a whirlwind of cleaning up and reconstruction in New Orleans. And so after, really 6 or 7 years of just nonstop action, I was just ready to move on. And I got out, and unfortunately, it was a really, really bad time in the economy, and I lost everything and kind of went into my own little depressive hole, and was being prescribed a ton of medicines through the VA, and including a lot of opiates that led to my own a dependency, at least. And eventually I started seeing the cannabis legalization start to come about. By 2012, Colorado had legalized, and by 2014, it was accessible for the first time ever. And so I got a little excited about that and thought maybe I could jump into the industry and work in the industry. I lived in South Alabama at the time, and Amendment 2 was coming about in Florida. And I thought, well, surely they're going to pass this. It's a medical necessity. We're seeing it happen across the country right now. There's no doubt it's going to pass. And it did, and it failed. And that was one of the biggest reasons I got more involved, and it kind of lit a fire under my ass, and I wanted to, do more. I couldn't believe that 58% of the population voted yes for a medical need for patients, and they still wouldn't allow it. It just didn't make any sense to me. So that's kind of where the hashtag One Plant started.
Okay, I apologize. So I don't know if everybody heard that because I started talking. So you said that's when you started hashtag One Plant. But also, didn't you go through some sort of your own injury or something? Then you began to utilize cannabis as a medicine yourself?
Well, that's I've dealt with a lot of different injuries, from degenerative disc to bulging disc. Was in a pretty bad car accident in 2001, where I broke my back and broke 3 ribs and my wrist. So, I've been through quite a bit. My body is all beat up. But in the last 4 years, 3.5 to 4 years, I've been completely off all pharmaceutical drugs, and completely using cannabis and other natural alternatives. I use cannabis for my anxiety and depression and pain currently, but I haven't even taken an over-the-counter cough medicine in over 3 years. So that's what cannabis has done for me. And it really started more, not just about me, but like my mother, who passed this last May. It helped her. And when I got involved in this, it was kind of ironic that it would be would hit so close to home, and cannabis helped her a lot when she was battling her cancer, but ultimately she didn't make it.
Why
So
now if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. I wasn't aware you lost your mom, and I'm sorry for your loss. But when she tried to utilize the cannabis, what happened there? What kind of was it just being used for her appetite? Did you guys try like a heavy dose RS type oil? What kind of cancer was it?
She was really open to it. She's kind of comes from a hippie background, so she didn't have any problem smoking cannabis, and I did start getting her full extract cannabis oils, and it really helped her that first 6 months or so a lot. She started to, really want to change her diet and do the things that are also necessary if you want to overcome something like cancer. I mean, cannabis isn't going to just do it on its own. You gotta work at it. And after about 6 months or so, I guess she kind of gave up a little bit, and she didn't want to eat properly and do the things that she needed, but cannabis was still helping her out a lot. And ultimately the cancer had already gotten so large in her cervix. It was a cervical cancer. It had already gotten so large before we started the cannabis oil that when she kind of regressed and stopped wanting to try it, it ultimately, took over.
Wow. Well, again, I'm sorry for your loss, sir. So you started this page, this hash one plant. You want to share a little bit about that? Like, what led you to do that? What's been your experience? I think didn't recently Facebook like ban your page or block your page, something like that happen?
Yeah, they unpublished it, and they kind of they've been doing this, I think, for a couple of years. Like you said, they've kind of every once in a while, I don't know if it's an algorithm or whatnot, that they kind of purge some pages and get rid of groups. But I think this time it was a lot more based on the FDA and the DEA and, a lot of these CBD companies and hemp companies that are popping up. And I think it was really just unfair taking down business pages, taking down businesses that are selling what a lot of people believe to be legal hemp products, and Facebook just taking it upon themselves to be enforcement agencies, if you will. But I got the page back up. It took some emails and a lot of protesting and talking to. I mean, you can't talk to anybody with Facebook. There's nobody to talk to. So, but eventually it came back. I got in touch with somebody who supposedly worked for Facebook, and ironically enough, it didn't take more than a couple more days, and it was back.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good. I'm thankful for that. So this page, what's its focus? How can people find it? And kind of what's been your experience as you've been managing this page? What's your kind of outcome?
Well, like I was saying earlier, the origin was, back in 2014 when Amendment 2 failed. I started using the hashtag one plant a lot, and it kind of signifies how it's all cannabis. We have this huge divide, whether it's hemp or it's marijuana or it's recreational or it's medical or this or that. And ultimately it's all cannabis, and if we all came together and fought side by side, we could end prohibition together. So one plant was always about coming together under one flag of unity. And back then it helped to create a 6-state rally that I worked with people in Normal, Florida, and they actually took the ball with it and created a date and set a rally in Tallahassee. And I spoke to people here in Peachtree, Normal, in Atlanta, and got some advocates in Alabama where I was living at the time. And we all had rallies on February 15th, 2015. And I did that from a back porch in South Alabama on my phone. And that's when I realized that I had an opportunity to do more, and that I could do more, even though, I'm sitting on my back porch on my phone. And that kind of just, started the spark and made me want to just continue to do what I'm doing now.
So
creating
you're
rallies
in Georgia
and getting
now,
people
correct?
excited. And say again?
Oh, I said you're in Georgia now, correct?
I am, yeah. I'm born and raised here in Georgia, but because of my military, I lived in Alabama for a while. So, but after that happened, the rally in Atlanta actually made the centerfold of Newsweek magazine. And
Oh, wow.
I wanted to come back home and help, my state continue to move forward and ultimately, end prohibition here. And it has been one hell of a hard nut to crack since I got here in 2015.
Why do you think that is? What do you think if there was one or two major things that you could say these I know are definitive stumbling blocks in my state, what would those two main things be?
Well, of course, politics is a huge issue. I mean, living in Georgia, we're obviously a pretty deep red state. We're very conservative. We're in the Bible Belt, very religious, and those are some of the biggest obstacles. And we're known for having a good old boy network. We've got a bunch of good old boys in office, and whatever they say goes. There's no ballot initiative. There's nothing that we the people can really do here in Georgia except pay our politicians to do what we want them to do, and that doesn't usually work.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've participated in trying to assist legislation and fight legislation in Kansas and some other places. And I remember the last time, I think it was a year or two ago, they tried to get medicinal cannabis legalized in Kansas. Right before they voted on the bill, they did what was called a gut and go. And it was one guy, and he went in and gutted the whole bill and pushed it through, and they passed it, and it actually restricted the amount of THC that CBD could have in it, lower than the federal limit, making CBD essentially illegal in the state of Kansas. Then the media turns it around, and they're like, this medical cannabis win in Kansas. And it was like, are you crazy? They just gutted the bill. Made CBD.
That's really bad legislation that hurts patients.
But here's what's interesting. So we went and checked out the guy that did it. And sure enough, I don't remember his name offhand. I think in the comments, I'm going to put it in here so people can look him up. But this guy was funded. If you go to followthemoney.com, you can follow these politicians and who's funding him. He was funded by big alcohol, big tobacco, and every single pharmaceutical company, almost major, GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, all of them was giving him money to his campaigns. And I just thought this is what's going on. We got these special interests. We got these politicians that don't want to do their jobs. They're not for the people. Yet someone like yourself on the back porch in a house in Alabama can start a page and start hashtagging, and it generates so much interest from the people that you end up having a 6-state rally, and you're having this growth. So it's not like there are not a lot of people that definitely are starting to see that cannabis is medicine and it shouldn't be illegal. But what do you think is another stumbling block for legalization in your area?
Well, obviously the political divide, but then of course the other great divide that is pretty much everywhere in the whole advocacy community. I mean, it's like I said, the recreational versus medical versus hemp people versus this, and how the legislation for one thing battles the legislation for another. And if you're supportive for medical, then you're not supportive for recreational. And that's a big thing here as well. It's because we've got big groups here who have been fighting for medical, but they'll tell you straight to your face, but I don't want to talk about anything to do with recreational. No flower. You can't have any flower. It has to be oil. So they're for one thing, but they're not for the other thing. So that's a huge problem as well, trying to get these people to understand, hey, some of us need more THC. Some of us need flower. Some of us need edibles. This isn't going to be what we ultimately are going to have here. So why are you trying to get in the way?
Sure. And, I know people that they can only use flower, and they may have severe pain, but it's what works for their body and their chemistry. And I know other people that have to use oils or other kind of edibles because they don't like to smoke, make them paranoid. Like it is developing what works for you. But I wanted to touch on another thing. You said it's the Bible Belt. You said, that red state conservative, which I think it's unfortunate that, Christians are being associated with prohibition of medicine with all the new research, but unfortunately they are. And that's part of why we wanted to do this show. So I don't know if you read that report. Let me see the title of it. There was a report that came out from Colorado Christian University which was called The Economic and Social Cost of Legalized Marijuana by a gentleman by the
Right.
name of, you're familiar with that report, right?
I have glanced at it, yes, but I am familiar with it.
Okay, so this university where this report came out of, I actually graduated from. And as an alumni of Colorado Christian University, I thought, what are these people doing? And I'm seeing that even though I feel I'm pretty conservative as a Christian, I don't understand all of this misinformation and propaganda that's happening throughout the churches, where you can't even have a conversation about it without people getting so volatile. And hopefully, with this show, we kind of want to change some of that dynamic. I mean, I know I don't necessarily promote recreational use, but I don't condemn it either. So it's like being kind of libertarian in my politics. Um, I think people should have a right to choose for themselves what they put into their body. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we have these reports coming out basically saying that medical cannabis is devastating communities, and I personally just haven't seen that. I mean, what about yourself? I mean, how is Georgia dealing with people on the cannabis level? Are they getting felonies? Are they getting misdemeanors? Can you only get a ticket? Is there some progress in how they're viewing it as a crime?
Well, kind of going back a little bit to, here in Georgia, one of the biggest prohibitionist groups that have fought us is the Georgia Baptist, whatever the Georgia Baptist committee. I don't know. Whoever. Huh?
I think I read some kind of statement that they put out, because I'm directly trying to go to groups like this and say, we need to have this conversation because most of what you guys say is incorrect.
Right. Yeah. And, and they've come out and said, we're for this very, very strict, tightly controlled, 5% only low THC oil for babies. And that's it. And they've said that. And then they strongly oppose anything that goes to progress that a little bit. So it's tough, but and then you've got the Sheriff's Association. They've been fighting us a lot. So these guys are they're big down here. They have a lot of clout.
And so if someone got caught with an eighth of cannabis flower, what would happen to them?
And then to the next thing, we are progressing quite a bit here in the state. We've done a city by city initiative where we've tried to get cities like Savannah, like Athens, like Clarkston, like other cities to decriminalize the possession of cannabis. And a lot of them have moved forward with it. And you've even seen the city limits of Atlanta do the same thing. And now Fulton County and some of the surrounding areas, that anything less than an ounce is supposed to be non-arrestable offense. And we've actually seen about 70% less arrests in the city for possession only in the last year. So the data's in, it's working. Why there's still 25% arrests, I don't know, but it's definitely working. It's helping. So the attitudes are changing here in Georgia, especially in Atlanta, because ironic enough, Atlanta is a little bit more democratic than conservative. So there's, that's probably the reason why it's progressing a little bit more around Atlanta.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that in more and more states, but like with our activism in Kansas, because that's where we grew up. People are, well, you're in Colorado. What are you doing in Kansas? Well, that's where we grew up. We still have a lot of friends there. We fled the state of Kansas. There, many people know our story. I won't get into that here right now, but yeah, we still want to see it change, because there are people that I personally know who have had to flee the state of Kansas, move to Colorado because their child or themselves have a serious medical condition, and they're tired of being criminalized. They're tired of fearing that, or giving their, one mom, I watched her story for years, and her child had epilepsy, and just watching the deterioration of that child till she finally fled to the state of Colorado. And then his, I think since he's been here, he had some seizures initially, but he's been seizure free for months and months and months and months. First time ever in their life. And yet
Yeah, it's pretty
Kansas, if
amazing.
you're caught with a joint, it's a small charge, but if you get caught twice, you're hit with a felony. And they're still taking people's kids away if there's any suspicion of marijuana use, even though they deny it, say that they don't. It's really hard on these families that have medical conditions all over the country.
Yeah, it is. And even in Georgia, you know, we're seeing just recently a Facebook friend of mine actually had been arrested because they were using hemp extracts, a CBD oil, and their child was taken from their custody because of it. And I was, I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you serious?
They got arrested for CBD oil in what state?
In Georgia. It was up in North Georgia, and they were considering it they were considering it under Georgia's extracts law instead of as a hemp oil, even though right above them in the state of Tennessee, that hemp is rampant. I mean, there's so many CBD shops up there, it's crazy. And there's plenty here in Georgia as well. But yeah, she was arrested and her kids taken away for CBD oil, for less than 0.3% THC hemp extracts.
That is crazy. And what kind of resolution? Is she still going through it, or did they? Yeah, they're
still dealing with it. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I haven't spoken to her in a week or two, but I'm going to reach out to her and find out what's going on. I gave her some people to talk to as far as to get legal help. But I mean, I even cited her the laws. I'm like, this is supposedly a legal product. It even says under the Farm Bill that no state shall interfere with the interstate commerce of these products. So they, these other cases that you're seeing happening in Oklahoma and whatnot, where the truck drivers got pulled over for hemp and they're in jail. I mean, they're not supposed to stop these people.
Oh, ridiculous. I actually think they got out of jail, but that shows the absurdity. Like, these guys are driving through Oklahoma. They have a semi full of hemp. They have paperwork with the testing results and where they're going to. The police seize all of it, which right there interferes
Take them to jail.
With their commerce. Take them to jail, but I think they got out. I think that public outcry was so loud.
Two of them posted bond, I think, pretty quickly. The other two were in there for like over a week.
Wow, and that is so ridiculous. Yeah. And then I think the owner of the company they were taking the hemp to lost those shipments. I think that all that money's gone and wasted. But as to your friend, if they ever want to come on the show too, I'd love to talk to them and tell their story.
Yeah.
We're getting low on time. I did want to ask you, so part of what we're doing with this show is trying to educate people on the different ways and methods for treating their conditions with cannabis. So we have a guest on like yourself. If you could share a little bit about the different types of cannabis and then what is effective for your conditions, if you feel comfortable sharing it, like what your condition is and how you use it as a medicine to treat that condition.
Well, I currently, like I said, I've got a lot of degenerative issues, back and knees, but otherwise I'm in pretty good overall health and condition. This last 6 months has been kicking my butt because my knees have been hurting pretty bad. But I take CBD on a daily basis, a hemp extract. I've got a few different companies that I use that I work with as far as, that I've just known for a long time. I've got a tincture that I've gotten from Colorado that I really like too, which is it's a vegetable glycerin. Basically, they soak the buds in this vegetable glycerin for quite a long period of time. And then they strain it and put it back into a bottle, and it extracts all the cannabinoids from the buds. So this tincture is really, really good, and it's full of cannabinoids. And of course, I use a lot of flower too, so I do smoke a lot. That helps a lot with my anxiety and of course pain.
And so you use CBD and smoking. So for people in other states, if they just let's say they're in a prohibitionist state, I always recommend people start with CBD. There's a lot of different companies. I think eventually for us, what we're going to start doing, and I see that you're doing that at one plant as well, is trying to find good products that we can then put on our website on healingtree.life to help these companies that are selling quality product get traffic, and where we
Exactly.
feel comfortable. Hey, if you're going to try a product, we know this product is good, because we don't want people getting snake oil. We don't want people getting scammed. We want to get solid medicine into people's hands. And hopefully within the next year or two, or however long it's going to take, we can get, cannabis descheduled, and then people can have more liberty to explore different methods. So there's one way that you're saying people who have pain issues that have never tried any kind of cannabinoid, we would definitely recommend starting with CBD. And so,
Yep. And that's exactly what I do as well. I tell people, hey, look, it's very hard to look on the internet and try to find a quality CBD oil, because there's thousands upon thousands of them out there, and you don't know what you're getting. So, I try to teach people what to look for, as far as, making sure everything has lab reports. And then I give them some quality options that I have tried, that I know work, that I know patients that have taken them. So, I mean, that's kind of where, One Plant is there for us, to kind of guide people a little bit and educate. That's what it's all about.
Okay, so we could share a little bit of that now if you want to talk about what to look for, how, again, so One Plant, is it a page? Is it a website? Do you have both? And then maybe if you want to plug some companies that you think have quality medicine, go ahead and feel free to do that, so people know where to check that out.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm James Meissner, and I do everything on my personal timeline too, so you can reach out and friend me. Also, we have a Facebook community page called One Plant. That's one word, ONEPLANT, and also a group, which is a private group, but it's with a hashtag. So it's hashtag One Plant, and you can check us out on Facebook. And we do have a website. It's currently being reconstructed, but the website is oneplantisallweneed.com. But as soon as that's up and running, we're going to have a lot of products, a lot of hemp products that we're going to be showcasing and showing people what all the different things that hemp can do. And, of course, a good selection of CBD products that from really trusted sites like Haley's Hope and Uber Botanicals and Evo Hemp.
Haley's Hope. I have heard a lot about Haley's Hope. I actually went out. So I know you're familiar with
That's the Georgia law, actually. The Haley's Hope Act. That was what Georgia's first medical act was, and it's named after a little girl named Haley Cox, and it's named for the Flowering Hope Foundation, which is by Jason Cranford. He's a native Georgian, and he's up in Colorado now. He's the one that makes all the oil, and that's what's been providing a lot of patients relief here in Georgia for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I've heard really good things, and I've actually been to their dispensary, or where they grow with American Medical Refugees here in Colorado, and it was really, really interesting time. They gave us a tour through the place, and a lot of stories. And I think actually that mom I was talking about, whose son no longer has epilepsy, or not epilepsy, but seizures. His seizures have pretty much stopped since he's been in Colorado. I think he was using Haley's Hope and some other things. So if they want to get more information on these different companies, is there stuff you have up right now, or is this still all developing?
Well, I mean, I can absolutely get you the links to all of these products. Currently, the website is down, and that's where you would probably find the links the quickest. In the next couple of weeks, it'll be back up. But I do share it occasionally in the groups and on the community page. So, but if you do want that, I can actually send it to you, and you can share the links as well.
Yeah, feel free. And then what we'll do is when we upload to YouTube, we'll put those links in the description, because that's our goal here. We want people to be able to see that people like you come from a law enforcement background. You're a veteran, you live in a very conservative state, but you have received medical benefit from cannabis. And the spectrum, like when you walk into a dispensary here in Colorado, if you sat down and just looked, you would be amazed at the diversity of people. If anything is a diverse medication, you'll see grandmas in there, you'll see people from every tribe, tongue, and nation. And it's just amazing to me that there's still scheduling it and arresting people and SWAT teaming people with these paramilitary police activities. And at the same time, uh, people are dying record numbers from opiate overdoses, which we know cannabis can help that as well. 25%
Yep.
reduction in overdose deaths in states where medical cannabis is available. And that's across the board. That's every single state.
And the sad thing is that's not reflected in our veteran communities still. And it should be. It should be reflected in our veteran communities as well, but they're not allowed access. And that's sad.
No, I'll tell you a story. So I went to, what's it called? Vocational rehabilitation. And I was going to see if they were going to finish paying for my school because I transitioned out of federal work and really wasn't sure what I was going to go back into, but I wanted to finish my master's and see if they could help me get into that field. And, you know, on my VA record, it says that the only medication I use is cannabis because in the state of Colorado, they can't do anything discriminatory against you if you're in a legal state. You know what I mean? In other states, they can. And so
right.
I went in there and met with the case manager, and she was so hostile. I couldn't figure it out at first until I went through my medical record that she had a copy of and saw that. And, you know, I told her I wanted to work with patients. I wanted to work in the VA. I wanted to work because my master's is in counseling, and I wanted to be able to help people get educated on cannabis. And she basically said, so you think you're going to go into the VA and give veterans cannabis or tell them to get on cannabis? She said, you're crazy. And I was like, ma'am, you're way behind the curve here. And yes, I am. I think when you guys finally wake up and the federal government stops this insane policy of its war against cannabis, you guys are going to need people to go in there and give peer support and other things to people so people can safely utilize this medication. And they actually were going to deny me voc rehab. And they were just so angry. And as I was sitting there just trying to talk to them about the facts, they just were like, we work for the federal government. We're not hearing this. And I was like, man, we got a long way to go with the VA and with those people.
Yep. Unfortunately, the people inside there aren't going to talk to you too much. That's just the policy. And until the federal government changes the classification of cannabis, that's probably where the VA is going to stand. I mean, there is some legislation out there that could change that, but I think that, I mean, hell, Congress isn't stupid. They would probably think it's smarter to reschedule cannabis than it is to pass some law that would allow the VA to recommend it before it's even rescheduled.
Right.
You know, they would probably reschedule first, but who knows? They are stupid sometimes.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, but appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think we're about out of time. So is there anything else that you think's valuable to share or anything else you want to touch upon?
No, man, I think we about covered it, and I appreciate it, and thank you for having me, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on again. We're going to see how this goes. Like I said, right now, this show is about kind of working out glitches, and really appreciate you coming on as one of our first guests, because we're actually going to utilize this show. We're going to package it. We're going to send it out to people who we want to be potential guests and say, look, this is what we're trying to do. And we want a broader spectrum. I mean, I know a lot of people from different areas of life that are benefiting from cannabis, who are really hoping to get some more good guests and have repeat guests on like yourself. If there's some things you really want to share that's going on down in Georgia and you want a platform, you're welcome to message me and we'll have you on again with the show. But thanks for joining us, James. And thanks for all the work that you do in this community trying to wake people up. We really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. You guys have a great night.
All right, take care, sir. All right, thank you for joining us today. And I don't know what that was. What was that, Ted? Wait, kill the music, Ted.
That's just Skype. That's just him hanging up, man. I gotta
clear
that out.
I'm not done yet. We're not going out yet.
All right.
I want to talk for a few more minutes about some things, because I did some research prior to doing this show, and I may do another show on this soon. But one thing that was stunning to me, I mean, we just talked about the 25%, and you can go Google it, do the research. And what's funny is when you read it, they're like, the FDA they're just stunned that they just don't know why. In states where cannabis is medically legal, 25% reduction of drug overdoses across the board, and it's just such a mystery. And it's like, no, it's not a mystery. It's not a mystery. Where it's not criminalized and people have access to safer alternatives, um, they're going to use them. You know what I mean? And so I was looking at all these different things because we've had some trouble getting some guests at first, and I just thought, we're going to keep this show going whether we get guests or not. We want to be consistent. We want this platform to really become a source of good information on all spectrums of the cannabis industry. And so I was doing some research just in case James had any difficulties and couldn't come on. And I was looking at the overdose stats, and it's really amazing. I want you to check this out. So in 1999, of all drugs, there were 16,849 overdoses, right? But in 2017, that number jumped to 70,237 overdose deaths. That's what I mean, overdose deaths. And so as I started looking through opiates, through methamphetamine, through all the different things that they were talking about, there has been this spike from 1999 all the way up to 2017, this huge spike. Like, for instance, opiate prescription deaths from people that had a prescription. 1999, 3,442 deaths. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's a population of some small towns in America, guys. Like, that's a lot of people in 1 year. But in 2017, it was 17,029. That is a huge jump. That is a ginormous jump. And it's just, you watch the graph, it just spikes. Clean up for heroin overdoses. This one was really incredible for me. 1999, there were only 1,960 overdose deaths on heroin. I think there's some cities in Ohio where they've had that many deaths just in that city. 2017, it jumped to 15,482. Everyone knows we have this incredible opiate epidemic killing so many young people and any kind of people all over this country. And like James said, and that's why the Healing Tree, it's not only going to be just about the cannabis issues. I think this is a really important issue, but I'm also in recovery. And it's a hard balance in this age to be in recovery and to be a cannabis activist, because people still have this complete abstinence based mentality for recovery. But for people with severe opiate addictions, that doesn't always work. And in a place where, like AA, where they say, well, relapse is a part of recovery, or even in NA sometimes. But in this age where we have so many people overdosing and dying on heroin, relapse equals death to a lot of people. Like, that can happen with alcohol, but usually people just get drunk, their life starts deteriorating, and they go back into this destructive cycle. They don't take one drink and then end up falling over dead on the floor. And I'm not minimizing alcohol. I'm just saying, I mean, it's dangerous as well if you're not careful with it. You have an alcohol abuse issue. But with heroin, those relapses are critical points where a lot of people end up dying because they haven't been on heroin for a while. Their tolerance goes down, and then they do some and they take too much and they overdose. And so they utilize other medications in conjunction with therapy and other forms of interventions in their recovery groups, meetings, whatever. But they're utilizing dangerous medications like methadone, like Suboxone. And there's some places that are even debating just giving them heroin. So here they admit that like opiate, like methadone clinics, they're not treatment facilities. If you go read the research, if you go see what researchers are saying, they're monitoring communities. Their point is to help know who you are and who the addicts are in their community and minimize the amount of damage these people can do to the community. That's why they're debating giving heroin, because they know it's about surveillance. It's about observation. It's about minimizing damage. They're not trying to get people necessarily off these substances. They want them to be able to control their behavior and survive. There is some care behind it, But when you have this huge spike of overdose deaths and you have them using something toxic, like if you're on Suboxone for 2 years, you're going to be physically addicted. And from my understanding, that physical addiction, like with methadone, is way harder to break. And with methadone, while you're using it, you can die. How do I know this? Look at the research. But not only that, we had a family member who got off opiates. They were taking methadone according to the schedule that was given by the clinic and their doctor, but the clinic wasn't observing whether or not the methadone was building up in his bloodstream. And on New Year's Eve, a couple of years ago, he took his normal dose and he dropped dead because he had a toxic buildup of methadone in his system and it killed him. And so the healing tree is about some of that stuff too, because I've been off opiates since 2012. I know that cannabis played a role in my recovery. I mean, obviously, it was changing my diet, changing my lifestyle, exercise, but you can get free from that situation. You can get free from those chemicals and not have to use something like methadone or something like Suboxone. So we want to talk about recovery issues and share our own experience, strength, and hope. Because I know one thing that led me back to relapse with opiates, and I could have became one of these statistics, is that I would start to utilize cannabis to treat my underlying conditions instead of pharmaceuticals, instead of benzodiazepines. And I would actually start doing better in my life. And then someone would find out that I was a cannabis patient and they would be like, "You're just an addict. Why are you even trying? You might as well be shooting heroin if you're going to just use cannabis. You're just a drug addict." And I would begin to feel so guilty. And because a lot of those people were in the Christian community, like James just shared with everybody, because I was active in church. I went to Colorado Christian University on a track to be a pastor. And then I went to Denver Seminary. And after 2 years, I just quit. I couldn't do it anymore. Still struggling in and out of my own addiction. I realized my life did not fit what I believe the Bible says that a man needs to be a spiritual leader. But that relapsing in and out and back and forth was partially, I believe, because I bought into the propaganda and lies of people that would call me an addict, of people that would demonize cannabis. And until recently, over the past few years, the research that's came out that's just conclusively showing how beneficial cannabis can be as a medicine for people, that I began to revisit this issue. And I began to pray a lot. And I really recognized that the Christian community is hurting patients. The Christian community that's going out there like the Centennial Institute and putting out these long propaganda reports that are twisted and skewed information, that even people that are not cannabis activists and other journalists can look at it and say, "This is horrible research." And it just makes us look like a bunch of selfish, uncaring idiots, Jeff Hunt. If you had valid information, that would be different. And I'm about to close here, guys, but I think this is important because we're going to talk more about this issue on the next show. We're going to talk more about some of the side effects of these medications they're using on people versus cannabis. We have another guest that's going to be great. Really enjoyed James coming on. And we'll get those links put up with this video so people can have access to CBD. I used to be an alcoholic too. I don't drink anymore. I don't have a desire to drink anymore. And I'm not fully in a 12-step recovery program. So I recognize that if I have to use cannabis in order to maintain a walk of recovery where my life is stable and I'm not going downhill with these chemicals that can kill me if I relapse, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And people can judge and condemn all day long, but my life is better right now than it's ever been. And I know that cannabis is medicine. But I want to point one thing out. Okay. So let's look at one of those statistics. Okay. 70,237. Let's look at that number. I'm going to well, my calculator, because I'm not a math whiz, but okay. So we're going to look at 70,237 divided by 25% equals. That is not right. Not divided by. Okay, it was times. Sorry, I forgot. You math people knew that as soon as I said that. You were like, oh, no, seriously. So 70,237 people. If cannabis is across the board reducing overdose deaths by 25%, that is 17,559 people, give or take, that would still be alive today. That people that would still have a brother or a husband or a sister or a mother or a father, because opiate addiction and these severe opiate crisis that's hitting our country is destroying families, and sometimes entire generations, dad, mom, brother, sister. I've seen stories of families where a mother's lost every single one of her sons. She had 5 sons, they all died, she's got one left, and now he's addicted to opiates. This is a nasty and horrible thing, and I really believe that if cannabis and the information is dealt with in wisdom, and it's dealt with professionally, and it's dealt with in a manner where we understand the sacredness of using it as a medication, all these people have been helped. And the little Epilax pills and other type of medications that they give so that the pharmaceutical companies can get a profit off a plant that grows in the ground that anybody can grow with a little bit of training, that doesn't help for some of these conditions. I have never heard of anybody that's in recovery that utilized cannabis as a medicine successfully, that has utilized one of these pills or sprays or whatever cannabis derived medications, and it's been more effective or it's been better. Everyone I've talked to that's been prescribed these things say, I hate them. And it just really burns me that Jeff Hunt and the Centennial Institute is putting things out like this. So through these shows, depending on how many guests we get, I'm going to start going through this economic and social cost of legalized marijuana in Colorado, and I'm going to tear it down point by point. And I'm going to show you why it's propaganda, and I'm going to challenge these Christians all over this country, like the Baptists down in Georgia, to stop criminalizing patients, stop using really bad information that most people know is bad to justify in your mind why you're doing this. 17,000, over 17,000 people would be alive if they had access to medical cannabis potentially in the United States. So that's going to be our show today. That's my rant for the end. I think this is going to be an exciting show. We're going to start working on getting things that we can test out and that we can promote as well. But I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again on the Healing Tree. Thanks, and have a good day. Am I clear?